Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session where I'm going to answer a question sent in by LK. LK has asked how to use as and like correctly. It's a very good question because they often get confused with each other. So let's have a look at my first slide here, starting with as. Use as for sameness. For example, when you use the word same, she has the same surname as you, not like you, same as. Or as, to say two things are exactly the same. He is as stubborn as me. Now here you notice that stubborn is an adjective. So the two words as and as go immediately before and after. As stubborn as me. But we can also compare and show the sameness of two quantities. So in that case, be careful that we need to add the words much and many. So if your word is uncountable, like time, we need as much as. And if your word is countable, like hobbies, is as many as. So the two sentences, for example, are, she doesn't have as much time as me, and I don't have as many hobbies as you. So that's the most common use of as for sameness. Same as. Okay. Let's look at like. Like is used more for similarity. So the difference, sameness and similarity. For example, stop behaving like a 2-year-old, not exactly the same, but similar. Or this picture doesn't look like you. You're sounding like my mom. Okay, not exactly like my mom, but like my mom, similar. Or like you, similar to you, she adores children. So I think that's very easy to distinguish. But then there come situations, examples where both may work. Excuse me, let's look at those. For example, for giving examples, you can use like and such as. Now that's really important to remember, not to use only as, it's such as. So let's say, for example, our sentence is, try to avoid carbs, like rice or pasta. For example, rice or pasta. Now, you can use as only if you put such in there. Try to avoid carbs, such as rice or pasta, right? And such as is more formal than like. But avoid the mistake of using only as. Don't say, try to avoid carbs as rice and pasta. Okay, so that's an important one to remember. I do come across this mistake a lot. Next point is this expression, this question. We use the word like in very often in questions like what like, what is it like, what was it like, what is he like? And when you hear this question, the person is asking you to give them a description of something. For example, if someone says, what's the weather like? Your answer would be to describe the type of weather you have. It's cold and wet, and that's accurate. In England, usually, that's a very common answer. It's cold and wet. Now, common mistake to avoid, everyone, is to say how. Because you could say, how is the weather? It's not a very common way of asking, but you can also say, how is the weather without like? And again, the answer would be, it's cold and wet. But the common mistake I hear is to mix the two expressions and say, how is the weather like? Avoid that. It's, how is the weather? Or more common, what is the weather like? Describe the weather to me. Points to remember. If we are using this question to ask about people, if you just use like what's John like, you're asking for a description of his character, of his personality. So you would say he's really kind, he's really patient, he's very helpful, right? If you want the person to describe physical attributes, then you have to use the word look like. So, and then it can be who does John look like or what does John look like. If it's who does John look like, he looks like his dad or his mum or his uncle. If it's what does John look like, then you would describe his physical attributes. For example, he is tall and thin. All right, so that's only for the word like, but really important to understand its usage in this kind of question. So next point is the situations where you should only use as, not like. And these are the things just that you have to remember. There's no logic. For example, when you talk about someone's profession, it's always as. She works as an engineer, right? Or similar to that, don't use your age as an excuse. Then we have the expressions as if and as though, also very common. He looks as if or as though he's been crying. And other expressions where as is the word we use, not like, is as you know. As you know, we're expanding into Europe. As expected. As expected, the inflation rate has risen. Now, having said that, of course, English being English, there are always exceptions. So there are two exceptions here where you can use like, but you will sound a lot more informal. So let's look at them. In the previous slide, we had say, as I said earlier, as I was saying earlier, it's one of those, or it looks as if, or looks as though. I would suggest that I would recommend that you use as and as if and as though in these situations. But you will hear in informal English, particularly American English, things like I said earlier, like I was saying, it looks like it's going to snow, for example. So just bear in mind that in informal English, sometimes they use like where they shouldn't. I would stick to the previous slide with the expressions I said, use as, not like. But it's important that you're aware. So lastly, we can use as to link two phrases as a linking word, a conjunction. You know that there are two possibilities. As can replace because. For example, instead of because I was tired, I went to bed early. As I was tired, I went to bed early. And sometimes as replaces while. So it becomes a time expression. For example, as I was leaving, the phone rang. Now, again, a very common mistake to be careful with is that as means while. And it doesn't really mean when in that sense. So, for example, you cannot say as I was a child. Again, it's a very common mistake I hear, particularly from Germanic language speakers. You can't say as I was a child because it's not an action in progress. It has that sense of while an action was in progress, not when. So you have to say when I was a child, I lived in a small village. All right. Or you can say as a child. That's then when I was the same as a child, but not as I was a child. And the last one, when an action is like it was not in progress, when she finished, we all started clapping, not as she finished. So I'll leave that slide a little bit on for you to see when you cannot use, I would take notes, when you cannot use as in linking situations. Right, okay, that brings us to the end of the presentation. I hope it's clarified a little bit, given you some pointers as to the difference of when to use as and when to use like. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. For more on this topic, click here. Remember to also check out my complete online course And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and happy studies!